Hi, I'm Tamara, and this is TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Hi, everyone. Today I'm speaking with Melissa Febos. Maybe you've read some of her books like Abandon Me, Whip Smart, or Girlhood. Her new book is called Bodywork, and today we speak about the art of memoir, why it's important to write about your own experiences, and shame. Shame. Oh, gosh, it's such a good conversation. I hope you like it. Hi, Melissa. It's great to see you.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So I am new to the Melissa Febos world. And by that, I mean, I know who you are and I've read your work, but I'm really into you right now.
Oh, thank you. I'm
And
flattered.
I really am. And I love your new book, Bodywork. Gosh, there's so much to talk to you about. Okay, you know where I want to start? I want to start with the article you just wrote in the New York Times about breast reduction. I have never seen that topic spoken about publicly, really. And I was floored. And it made me, well, let's put it this way. I spent my entire therapy session this week talking about you and that article.
Oh, honestly, that is the highest compliment. I've heard it a couple of times before, and I feel really good about myself because it took an investment of many hours of talking in therapy for me to write that. And most of the stuff, I sort of specialize in writing about things that we don't see talked about a lot. And that's not really by choice. It's kind of just keeps happening. And I keep thinking, gee, maybe I'll write about something a little easier next time. And then like, even honestly, when I decided to get my breast reduction surgery, I was like jogging in Prospect Park, with my like 5 sports bras on. And I was like, this surgery would really be the kind of thing I would write about. It would be really cool to write about. Too bad I'll never, ever do that because I have never even been able to speak about this in front of another person, like really for until I was like 35. But then the day I got the surgery, I got home and I was like real woozy. I had gone under general anesthesia. And I said to my wife from my little nest of pillows on the couch, I said, sweetie, bring me my computer. And she was like, why? And I was like, I just need to take some notes before I forget everything. And she was like, here we go. So,
Right. It's, you know, why is breast reduction such a it feels like there's so much shame around it. And I can only, I mean, I'll say something out loud that I never said. I had a breast reduction. I was way younger than you when I had it. And I never talk about it. And I never tell anybody. And I found it really, I had to read your article. I'm not kidding. I had to read it like 3 or 4 times because I couldn't believe a couple of things. One, you had the same experience as me as a young girl. And you waited so long. And then I started analyzing whether you made the better move by waiting longer or if I made the better move by doing it younger. And
yeah.
I think that, you know what I mean? Like it just
Yeah.
became this thing and it was so hard for me to unravel it. And the piece you wrote, like, honestly, I feel like it will break open so many women who have held their bodies in so much shame and embarrassment and fear for their entire lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That really means a lot. And that's my hope. And I really think that's the thing, right? Because when you read about a topic like that, I mean, of course, there's going to be some people who think, oh, you shouldn't talk about that. But mostly, I find it really compelling, deeply sympathetic. And that on the other side of writing about it, I often end up realizing, oh, the thing that keeps me from talking about it has nothing to do with talking about it. It has to do with the shame from the past. It has to do with the shame that I acquired that prevented me from doing something about it or from talking to anyone about it when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old and all the way through. And it's just like this little residue is like lingering because as soon as I start talking about it, I come into sort of connection and fellowship with other people who have had similar experiences. Like without exception, that has been my experience about writing about these kind of unspeakable feeling topics. And I think that's why I can't stop doing it because I keep getting more and more free and um, broadening that community of people.
But don't you find that, I mean, yes, I feel like you have opened up an opportunity for other women to talk about things that they feel shame about with their body. And breasts aren't the only thing. There are many things that women feel shame about when it comes to their body. And I would say that most of the time it's unspeakable, right? Unless it's to somebody really close. So I love how you write because I love that you are saying out loud what so many of us are thinking and too scared to say out loud. And it gives everyone permission to maybe say, oh, hey, read this article. Like, what do you think of that? Or, but why do we have so much shame as women around so many things and not just our bodies, but why do we carry so much shame?
Yeah. I mean, I think, my writing process is very much one of sort of starting with an intense personal experience, particularly the unspeakable. And that means that it usually has to do with shame. And then I start digging and reading and researching and talking to other people. And the place that I usually end up is that women's bodies has been characterized in human civilization in many societies for like literally hundreds of years as like shameful sites of sinning and depravity and inferiority, like all the way back to like the origins of the Christian church, like it really. And I've always found that so comforting because the trick of shame is that by not speaking about it, it's so easy to believe that it belongs to us and that it's ours alone. And as soon as we start talking about it and other people start saying, oh my God, me too, the next logical thought is like, okay, well, why are we all feeling this? And then we turn around and look at the culture in which we live and we think, oh, duh.
Yeah.
Oh, here we have like a form of capitalism that is like constantly trying to sell us stuff to make ourselves better. And it is in its most profitable interest to convince us that we will never be good enough. And so, like, that's just one branch of it, right? There's like, once you start talking about patriarchy, you could talk about it for the rest of your life, which I guess is what I'm doing.
Okay, so let's talk about memoir because I love memoir. That's my preference to read is memoir. I find that
Bless you. We count on you.
It is my preference. And I say that because I find people's real stories so compelling and interesting. And that's what I learn from. So that's what I like. And I appreciate how much memoir you write. The first chapter in Body Work is navel gazing. And, I think that anybody who thinks about writing about themselves thinks that they're a narcissist or is scared they'll be called a narcissist or, oh God, like really you think you're that interesting, Melissa? Seriously? That you can write about yourself book after book after book? How do you get that out of your head?
Not incidentally. It has to be very intentional, I think. I had those sort of internalized voices and those externalized voices coming from other people for a long time. And I also have been hearing these fears and inhibitions and judgments or hypothetical judgments coming from my students because I teach writing. I've been teaching for like 16 years now. And I've just been hearing it nonstop for 16 years. People saying, well, how do I know that I'm not just being self-absorbed? Like nothing interesting enough has ever happened to me, right? Um, and I think the first step is really to sort of create a little bit of breathing room in one's thinking where I can stop and just ask myself the question like, does that come from my experience as a reader? Like, do I find memoirs to be self absorbed and boring and glorified diary entries? And the answer is like a resounding no, because I'm like you. I am so compelled by people speaking truth in beautiful sentences. Like, there's just nothing better. Um, and so it absolutely does not arise out of my own experiences as a reader. And so the next question is like, where did that come from? Like, who told me that? Whose voice is it masquerading in my head as my own thoughts and fears, right? And then, I read about this in Bodywork, but a lot of times for me, I'm like, oh, it was just like that one like, grumpy dude in my creative writing class in undergrad or whatever, like, I don't care what he thinks, right? Or like
Yeah.
that one professor who like was being dismissive. And it's like, I don't care what that guy thinks. What I care about is what I love reading and the people who I think will be most helped by my story, the way that I've been helped by other people's stories. And that step does a lot of work. So I'm constantly telling my students and myself to just make the space for that question. And that will start sort of a deconditioning process so that we can replace other people's voices with our own beliefs and opinions.
I love it because we do that with everything, really. We're always worried about what someone else is going to think. And I say we because I do think that most people feel that way. It could be about, you get dressed up to go to a party or something and you're wearing something that's maybe a little bit out of your comfort zone. You're like, oh, what's everybody going to think about this on me? It's not how I'm feeling, how I think I look. It always becomes about the external opinion. Yeah, so I love what you just said about that because it's true when you break it down, right? I don't care what you think. I actually don't. I care what, I think and the people I love think. And so you have written about let's talk about writing about your experience as a former sex worker. How do you write about things like that without, I don't know what the right word is, hurting your family's feelings, embarrassing your family, making them angry?
Yeah. I mean, for a lot of writers who cover this kind of material, it's not possible. There are a lot of people that the stigma is so profound and so far reaching, it's insurmountable, and that's why a lot of people don't write about it, and I respect that decision because the cost can be very high. I think for me, it has not been uncomplicated. um, my family has been sort of through the ringer in a lot of ways. But I will say that they are exceptional people. And what I have found is because I am not writing about my experience in sort of a salacious or tabloidy way, like I'm really trying to do deep emotional work and deep sort of social critique. Like I'm really trying to think through something that's big and important and really transcends the subject matter, right? I'm writing about like the interior feelings and thoughts and dilemmas that arose for me around sex work, but they're not exclusive to sex workers. So I think there is, when I sent my first book, which deals most directly with this topic, to my family, there was a range of reactions. It was not easy for them. It took some hard conversations, and they had to sort of move through the, superficial sort of horror of having this out there in the world. But they read the book, and then they saw the way that the world related to the book. And I think that, this is partly just the privilege of getting some good press for that book. But, I was on like Fresh Air with Terry Gross, a few months after the book came out. So they were like, oh, wait a minute. So people are seeing the value in this. Maybe we can too. And maybe we can actually be proud of her, and over, with each book that gets a little bit easier, but it's never, I know that they all probably wish I would just write some really easy commercial novel that has no characters from my past, and nobody's talking about my sex life.
Like, please,
just a simple rom. And God bless them, they deserve it. There are some things that like a parent just shouldn't have to know about their kid, and I have been a little bit unsparing in that way. So I'm really grateful.
Yeah, no kidding. It sounds like you have a great family. But did they know about your sex work before you wrote the book? It wasn't a surprise, right?
It wasn't a surprise, but the thing was, and this again, sort of, it's analogous to almost everything I write about, where I told them, but I gave them a very tailored version of it, where I was like, it's hardly sexual at all. It's really a therapy job. It's a feminist job. I had a lot of costumes to put it in that would make it more palatable to them and really to anyone I was talking to about it, because I was pretty open, but I gave everyone a tailored version that would be most digestible for them. And so, but in the book, for me, writing is a truth serum. I cannot tell the palatable story. I have to tell the true story to myself and whoever else might be reading it, which is why I love it, but also why it's really hard. So what they read about and what they've read about in all my work is something they knew the facts of, but they didn't know the real, gritty, true, complicated details, and that can be shocking, and for me also, it's shocking to often look back at the past and uncover a truer version. It's like, oh, wow, this is not what I thought it was.
Yeah. And that's what I find so fascinating about your writing is I learned something from you. Like when I was reading about the cuddle party, I was super uncomfortable reading about you cuddling with people because that sounds like a nightmare to me.
It sounded like a nightmare to me too. It's sort of, if you don't know me, it would be shocking. I know. That's
and your wife went with you. And I just I couldn't believe it. I was just like, wow, I can't believe it. Yeah, okay. And then off you went. Because and you wrote this for the New York Times, and you wrote about it was really about touch, right?
It was about touch and consent. And, believe me, when I learned about it because a friend texted me a link kind of as a joke and was like, this seems like something you would be interested in. Ha ha ha. And I felt the same deep belly cringe where I was like, ew, like an orgy, but cuddling with strangers, spare me. But there is this other part of me that was like, you know what? I don't have that strong a response to anything unless there is some deep psychological underpinning. There's something there, and I've gotten a lot of freedom from digging that stuff up. And so I was like, ooh, okay, I guess I'll go. And no one was more shocked than me when my wife, who was then my girlfriend of a year, was like, oh yeah, can I come? Okay. But as soon as I went and I found myself cuddling with people I didn't want to, I was like, here it is. This is the thing. It's why on earth, as a 37-year-old lifelong feminist who's been to lots of therapy, why on earth am I cuddling with these people who I've never met before? And it sent me on, kind of a detective story into my own psyche and my own past.
Yeah, and we all learn from that because it forces the reader to put themselves in that position. Or at least that's what it did for me. And I thought to myself, would I ever go to that? What if somebody asked me? I wouldn't have been like you. I wouldn't have said yes. I might have gone to look, but I think I mean, I don't know, maybe it would have changed, but it really forced me as the reader to put myself in your shoes and press what consent means to me, what touch means to me, what that all means. And that's why it's so, I mean, you really are, by sharing your own experiences, challenging the reader to understand how they would be in the same situation. And that's why I'm, I'm the president of your new fan club.
Oh, thank you.
Because it really forces you to look at your own emotions around things.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that. I mean, it really is my hope. And I think it's part of what keeps me honest in the process. Because I think, all right, if I'm going to walk towards this uncomfortable thing, if I'm going to write this and expect other people to read it, it has to be real. It has to be as real and rigorous and brave and deep as I'm capable of. And there's just no other area in my life where I'm willing to do that. So that's really, it's really funny when people meet me in life or when students take my classes for the first time, they're like, "You're not what I thought." And I say, "Well, what did you expect?" And they were like, "I thought you were going to be like really serious and scary, but you're ridiculous. And like, you're so silly." And I'm like, "Yeah, I save it all for the page."
One of the things we like to do on this podcast is we want to thank our guests for their time. And so we ask them to choose a Canadian nonprofit that we give $500 to in your name to thank you for being here. And you chose Community. I'm very familiar with their work. They're a nonprofit organization and they work to improve queer, trans, and two-spirit lives. So we'll be giving them $500 on your behalf. So thank you for choosing them.
Oh, thank you. I am so impressed and so honored to be a part of your donation. So thank you.
Yeah, they're a great group. So thank you for that. So when we look at it, if we talk about I feel like body work is almost like taking your class. I mean, I'm sure it's not exactly like taking your class, but it's sort of like your master class in a book, right? Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, I would. I mean, it's definitely it's a little more serious than I am in my class. You get a lot of like ridiculousness and a lot of jokes in my classes, but the content is definitely the same. It really is in many ways sort of a distillation of all of the lessons that were most important for me and that I talk about the most in my teaching.
And when you look back to when you were growing up and you were a young girl, I mean, were you destined to be a writer? Do you feel?
I mean, it sounds like sort of weird and hubristic to say so, but I actually do. And I I was probably calling myself a writer by the time I was like, I don't know, 9 or maybe 10 at the latest. I mean, I was sort of like a strange, arrogant child, but I think I was just a weird kid and I was obsessed with reading. And I sort of had this intuitive sense that I wasn't going to be able to devote my life to any kind of work that wasn't like my heart work, like it had to be something I was passionate about and would be consistently challenged by for my whole life. And as soon as I started writing and trying to translate my thoughts and feelings and inquiries into words, I was like, oh, this is it. I'm in 100%. And that never changed, which is not a requirement for writers, but it's pretty uncommon. But in many ways, I'm really glad. Like it feels like a gift that I've sort of always known.
Because you write a lot.
I do.
Like if anyone Googles Melissa Febos, you will get a long list of not only books but articles and you teach and you have a dog and a wife and a life, and so I'm just curious as to when, like, tell me about your process a little bit. Like, are you always writing in your head, or do you set aside time in a day? Because I think that's a big challenge for a lot of people too, is I don't have time. I don't have the time.
Yeah, it's the biggest challenge, I think, for people, because the way that we live, it's just not built for that kind of solitary immersion, right? So I think the key for me is two prongs. And the first thing is that my mental health and happiness in my life is dependent on my writing. And this is just has been true since I was in my early 20s, probably. Um, and it is the place, and I've talked about this a little in this conversation, where it is the place where I do my deepest thinking, where have the highest standards for myself, where I am the most honest. And I'm also like a bit of a people pleaser in life, like most people, like you were saying, I care what other people think. And so in writing, that is the number one and sometimes the only place where I will say a hard thing. And saying hard things and putting words to them is like how we grow as people, in my experience. And so, just like my ability to continue to transform and develop and grow and be honest with myself and self-reflective, it all happens in the writing. So I depend on it. And if I don't do it for a few weeks, I start to get really, really grumpy. So my wife will be like, please go write, get in your office. And the second thing is that I also recognized early in my writing career in my 20s, like, oh, this is really hard and it takes a lot of time. And so it really has to be like fully baked into the structure of my life. Like I can't be trying to wedge it in between other things. Like my life really has to be built around this practice. And so I started trying to do that really young, and I have been doing it for a really long time. And so what that means is that a lot of my friends are writers. So we're talking about it when we hang out or we get together and we write together. It means that I do the writing first, because if I wait to get the laundry done and answer the emails and, do the grading, I never get to it. So I get up early in the morning before any emails start coming in, and I write for a few hours first thing. Not every day, but like most days. And then I'm just like happy the rest of the day and I've gotten my work done, So, and that is something that I tell my students, like, anyone can do, but it does require this radical reordering, because we're socialized to like take care of other people before ourselves, right? And with writing, you cannot do that. You have to you have to be selfish, and the other really helpful thing is that I don't have kids. And so my friends who have kids who are writers, they get their work done, but whenever I start to feel sorry for myself, I just think about them.
That's nice. So what does being a feminist mean to you?
The older I get, the broader my definition of feminism becomes. It really just means, for me at this point, it means that I believe in, a just and equitable society for everyone who lives in it. That's basically what it means. And how it manifests in my daily life, it means that I am always trying to increase my own awareness and advocacy for people who have been sort of oppressed and marginalized by our society.
Mm. Do you think that where we are now, it's 2022, we're halfway through the year. I can't believe it. And sometimes I feel like the world for women is, not going in the right direction. Well, especially right now in your country, and elsewhere around the world. And we're not perfect in Canada by any means, but it's hard sometimes to not, as a woman, to not feel overwhelmed that not only are we not being, we've never been prioritized, but, that we're going in the wrong direction for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. I know. It is so disheartening. Like, this is partly why I have to get up and do my writing before I look at my little like New York Times News Digest, because I'm just like, it takes me an hour to recover from just reading the headlines. It's a really scary, demoralizing, enraging time to be alive. And I have developed a lot of strategies to keep my spirit up so that I don't just like fall into total cynicism and nihilism and depression, because the opportunity is always there. It's a reasonable response to what we're living in. But part of what gives me hope is just thinking about the ways that women and all sorts of folks have been doing this work and trying to keep their spirits up and foster community and connection and make, to capitalize on the privileges that they enjoy to help other people forever. like literally forever. They have always been doing it and at way worse times than we are living in. So whichever way the pendulum is swinging, like there are people who have been out there consistently doing good, devoted work the whole time. And I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can just connect with those people and be like, how can I help? Here's what I've got. Where can I plug it in where people need it? And that always helps me. And I think, it's really connected for me to feeling like, for me, writing feels like the best service I can perform in this like totally falling apart, like perverse society.
Yeah.
Like it feels like I'm like, these are my gifts. This is the thing I'm best at. And I know I have like material evidence in the form of like all these emails I get that it gives people energy to go out there and fight and love harder, And so I'm just like wake up every morning trying to do the thing that's most useful.
I love it. Melissa, you are amazing. I love this conversation. Your website is melissafebos.com. It's Febos. And your Instagram and Twitter is your name in full, Melissa Febos, at Melissa Febos. I really appreciate your time. This was a great conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been my absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening to another episode of TELUS Talks with Tamara Taggart. Be sure to subscribe so you can join us every Tuesday for another conversation. You can also check out our website, telus.com/podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at TELUS Talks.